welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for joining us. I'm Finlos, and on this show we spend our time navigating different questions and ideas that are shaping our culture, our inner workings, and our experience. And today, what's on my mind is a topic that I read about today, and I kind of found, I guess, not surprising, but intriguing for what it might reveal. And it's talking about norms and questions about what is normal, but or through a very specific lens. And it really has made me think about just how much things are shifting, especially when we think about how we live our lives, what our values are, and what are the expectations that we have of each other and of ourselves. And this is coming up because I read today that recently the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, reported that the US fertility rate hit an all-time low. And that's an interesting statistic. And the fact that fertility rates are so low, it kind of seems like a reflection of how norms in our society are evolving and how individual choices are adapting. But the CDC's report on the US fertility rate shows that it has plummeted to fewer than 1.6 children per woman. And it's a headline that grabbed my attention. And when I saw that number, it felt like it was pointing to something deeper than just demographics. I think it reflects fundamental shifts in how we, and especially women and people who are capable of having children, are choosing to live their lives and how we envision our futures. So I'm going to spend some time exploring some of the reasons why this might be happening. And when I look at the data and read what people are saying, a few key factors consistently emerge. First, there are undeniable economic pressures. The cost of raising children in the world today, from childcare and housing and education, makes starting or expanding a family feel financially overwhelming for many. And student loan debt, for instance, is often brought up as a significant hurdle. Then there's a very real tension, especially for women, between career ambitions and professional development and the timing of starting a family. The traditional career path, particularly in many demanding professions, often doesn't seem to easily accommodate the time sinks of early parenthood. And this can lead to choices to delay childbearing or to have fewer children overall. And we're also observing a trend where people are delaying major life milestones like marriage and home ownership. And it naturally pushes back the timeline for when people might consider having children. Another significant factor is the increased access to education and contraception. Globally, greater educational and career opportunities for women, combined with effective family planning tools empower individuals to make more deliberate and informed choices about their reproductive lives. And finally, I think it's important to acknowledge the growing environmental and broader societal concerns. I've heard from many individuals who express genuine worries about climate change, global political instability, or just the overall state of the world. And these concerns can make them hesitate about bringing children into it. If we consider the potential outcomes and effects of this shift, they are far-reaching. Fewer births mean we're looking at an aging population and potential workforce shortages in the coming decades, which could place significant strain on Social Security and healthcare systems. There is also an economic impact to consider. A smaller working age population could potentially slow economic growth and reduce innovation. And fundamentally, this trend is shifting our traditional family structures, leading to a rise in smaller families, more single-person households, or child-free couples. And I think that all of that is interesting. Those are clearly potential outcomes. And I think that those really speak actually more to a traditional conservative outlook on why we procreate, which is to create more workers, which I think is a very outdated, patriarchal way of thinking. I think it also lends itself in an interesting way to conversations about immigration. And when we're talking about economics, why people view immigration as such a threat to the economy. Because if native-born people are having fewer kids, and yet work still needs to be done, then the competition from immigrants in general, the fear is that those jobs will be taken. And honestly, I have to ask, if you're all about competition, what are you afraid of? But moving beyond those economic considerations, which I honestly think are maybe not at the heart of this, I think these shifts might also reflect a desire to move away from the intense focus on the nuclear family model and more towards raising children with broader communities, valuing chosen family and extended family just as much as the immediate family unit. And this really changes the social fabric and dynamics of our communities for the better, I think. It's also important to understand that the US isn't unique in this. This is very much a global trend. Many, quote, developed nations like Japan, South Korea, Italy, and Germany actually have even lower fertility rates than the US, often due to similar factors like economic pressures, advancements in gender equality, and evolving cultural norms. But while some developing nations still have higher rates, many are also beginning to see declines as they industrialize and as opportunities for women expand. Beyond the numbers, this trend profoundly reflects deeper cultural shifts, particularly around gender and the expectations placed on individuals. We're seeing a significant reevaluation of traditional gender roles. The old expectation of women primarily as caregivers, solely focused on domestic life, is being actively challenged and often rejected by many. Women are pursuing education and careers at unprecedented levels, seeking fulfillment that extends far beyond traditional maternal roles. I believe this decline in fertility can be seen in part as a quiet but powerful responds to systemic sexism and patriarchal structures that historically limited women's choices and disproportionately burdened them with childcare and domestic duties. Many women are now demanding more equitable partnerships or simply choosing not to enter into arrangements that they feel would hinder their personal and professional growth. The pressure on women to have it all, a successful career, perfect motherhood, domestic harmony is immense and frankly, often unsustainable. So, the fertility drop might be telling us that many are choosing to opt out of or delay some of those elements to achieve a greater sense of balance, or simply to pursue an entirely different path altogether. Success no longer needs to be measured in this way. And here's another fascinating and sometimes complex layer. There's a noticeable divergence in how younger generations are engaging with religion, particularly along gender lines, and how that might influence attitudes toward children. Studies suggest that individuals assigned female at birth, on average, are becoming less religiously affiliated. They might be engaging with faith differently, perhaps seeking spiritual practices that feel more personally empowering and less prescriptive about traditional gender roles. Given that many religious traditions historically emphasize the importance of procreation and specific family structures, this evolving relationship with religion can directly impact choices around childbirth. As women may feel less bound by traditional religious directives, their personal choices about family size and timing can become more varied and less influenced by institutional expectations, which in turn contributes to the declining fertility rate. Conversely, some data indicates that for the first time in modern American history, more young men assigned male at birth are either claiming religious affiliation or maintaining consistent levels of engagement, even as women's engagement declines. There's evidence that some young men are being drawn to churches and religious communities that articulate more traditional gender roles and structures. They might be embracing ideas of male headship or finding a sense of order and purpose amidst what they perceive as chaotic or feminized modern culture. This embrace of more traditional religious attitudes among some young men can also influence their views on family formation, potentially reinforcing traditional ideas about procreation and gendered responsibilities within the family unit. This creates a very interesting and at times challenging divergence in expectations between genders that shapes our broader societal landscapes. And one other thing that might likely have an influence on the decrease in birth rates globally are environmental factors that have not been fully studied, from exposure to chemicals to microplastics. There is a general trend of an increase in autoimmune disease, especially in women and people assigned female at birth. And I suspect that there will be links found between birth rates and environmental factors as well. Especially the ongoing shift in fertility rates and the potential move away from the nuclear family really has me thinking deeply about how we define legacy. For countless generations, the concept of legacy was almost instinctively tied to procreation, to carrying on a family name, a lineage passing down genes. But if fewer people are having children or choosing to have fewer children, and if the very model of family is expanding beyond the nuclear unit, then I wonder what that means for our collective and individual understanding of leaving a mark on the world. And is that even an idea that itself is becoming less significant? Is it an idea that is actually harmful in the long run? If our motive should be to leave no trace of ourselves, then the idea of legacy itself might be the problem, or a problem. But maybe a shift in legacy, or how we think about legacy, can be found through creative works, through building strong communities, through innovation, like techniques and tools that can be shared, like environmental stewardship, or through mentorship. It opens up a profound conversation, I think, about finding meaning and purpose outside the traditional framework of a legacy. And this whole demographic shift isn't just about individual decisions. It actually reflects a much broader societal dialogue about the immense pressure we often feel to conform to traditional life paths. For those who choose not to have children or to have fewer, the societal scrutiny can be quite intense. It often comes with invasive questions or judgment or harsh comments. It takes courage to forge a path that deviates from these deeply held societal expectations, especially when those expectations are tied to something as fundamental as family. And this pressure, I believe, is only compounded by the differing religious and gender role expectations that younger men and women are increasingly encountering, creating a more complex social environment that is complicated by regional politics, family cultures, power dynamics, and all of these things. We often talk about individual freedom to choose, and that's vital, but with that freedom comes a responsibility also to adapt. If traditional family structures are changing, and if the nuclear family is less central, then how do our communities, our governments, and our institutions evolve to support these diverse life choices? Are governments and institutions even necessary? How do we address the challenges of an aging population? How do we consider how to care for our loved ones? How do we redefine our social safety nets to reflect these new realities? We, as a society, need to find new forms of connection and meaning in tangible experiences that can be shared in community, in intentional communities, in chosen families that offer a different kind of belonging and support system for raising children and for life in general. I think that is a compelling thought. I think all of this is about reclaiming our personal agency, especially the agency of women, femme folks, people assigned female at birth. It's about being deliberate and allowing them to define what a good life looks like, rather than passively accepting external definitions that they receive and being forced to stay in lanes that they didn't get to choose. And the choice might be not to have children or to delay parenthood. It might mean reallocating time and energy and resources towards other pursuits in the community or for the self, whether that's personal growth or creative endeavors, new ways, new avenues of finding fulfillment might emerge when traditional expectations begin to loosen their grip. And I think that's a powerful thing to consider. And that leads me to the final segment and how today depression feels like the constant hum of shoulds in the background of my mind. A voice telling me, maybe you, I should want this, or I should want that. I should want kids. I should be married by now. I should be earning more. I should be further along in my career. When our individual desires or simply our real life circumstances don't align with these deeply ingrained expectations, many of which, if we're honest, are rooted in really outdated gender roles or patriarchal ideals, or even the persistent idea of the nuclear family, it can lead to profound feelings of inadequacy, shame, or even a sense of failure, regardless of what we've actually accomplished. And it can be particularly acute for women who historically bear a disproportionate share of these societal expectations related to family and domesticity. Or on the other hand, depression can also manifest as a quiet grief for a life path that feels impossible to achieve because of these very real shifting dynamics. If someone genuinely does want a large family, but economic realities make it unfeasible, or if the pressure to have it all ultimately leads to burnout, it can feel like the sheer exhaustion of constantly having to justify your choices to others, or even sometimes to yourself, especially when you're navigating these complex and often conflicting expectations that are shaped by gender, religious influences, and the changing definition of family itself. The path forward might involve consciously disentangling our personal happiness from these external societal scripts. For those choosing child-free lives, or those embracing alternate family structures, it's about validating their choices and finding joy and fulfillment in diverse ways that may not be universally celebrated, but are deeply meaningful for them. For all of us, it's about recognizing that authentic joy truly comes from internal alignment, not from checking off boxes on some external list handed down to us. And for those who simply are unable to reach the goals that they would like, it's about embracing them as community and finding ways to support and nurture who they are, not what they can't be, allowing them to grieve and allowing them to find a path for what feels true and what feels right. I think we really need to make an effort to cultivate unburdened spaces in our lives, both physically and mentally, where we can pursue the things that bring us joy purely for the sake of the enjoyment, for personal growth. And these spaces should be free from external pressures. Everyone's experience is different. No one can speak for you. But I hope that you hear that you are not alone. I hope that you have heard something that resonates with you. Know that you're not alone. Maybe try to reach out to a friend or a loved one, a trusted family member, a partner. And if you are unable to do that, I hope that you're able to find professional help, a therapist, a counselor who has resources to help you to cope in healthy ways and find a space in which you can be safe and feel secure. No matter what you're feeling, those feelings are valid. They are real. It's all part of this journey. As we wrap up our conversation today, I hope you take a moment to consider that the things that we're talking about aren't a challenge. They're fundamentally an invitation to rethink, to redefine, and to find a course that truly aligns with our values, our desires, even if it means diverging from the crowd and navigating complex, sometimes conflicting expectations. And that's the end of the episode. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions for the show, email them to finlos@finloslives.com or reach out to me on social media. You can also find information on the website, finloslives.com. I hope that you'll subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified whenever a new episode drops. If you found value in this content, I'd really appreciate it if you'd share it with somebody in your network who you think might find it interesting as well. I really appreciate your time, and I thank you for joining me today. Keep moving, keep thinking, and I look forward to our next conversation.